When it comes to moving forward and making progress on a journey of transformative growth at your financial brand, we can all lean on an old African proverb for guidance. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. That's because, as we all know, change can feel confusing, change can feel frustrating, change can feel overwhelming. But what if you and your team could learn and apply a simple 3-step framework to guide you forward through the complexity of change? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be discussing on today's episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Welcome back to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm James Robert Lay, founder and CEO of the Digital Growth Institute, where we help financial brands uncover and eliminate their biggest customer journey blind spots so that they can stop losing loans and deposits. Now, before we get into today's episode, I want to invite you to be one of 100 financial brands that I'll be guiding through the 2025 Digital Growth Accelerator. I want to be very clear. The 2025 Digital Growth Accelerator program is only for growth-minded financial brand marketing, sales, and leadership teams that want to thrive, not to survive in 2025 and beyond. So if this sounds like you, if this sounds like your team, text me right now, 832-549-5792. Let's have a quick conversation, because I've already had some very good conversations over the past few weeks with financial brand leaders who listen to this podcast, because they did reach out to me. They did text me. We did have a conversation about how they want to grow and how we can all grow together through the Digital Growth Accelerator. Joining me for today's conversation on the podcast is David Barone, EVP of Client Growth at Nymbus. Today, we're going to be talking through a 3-step process that can guide you, it can guide your team through the complexity of change. Welcome to the show, David. It is so good to share time with you today, buddy.
James Robert, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. We're looking forward to the conversation.
You know, I am too, because it's about one of my favorite words. I wrote about it in Banking on Change. It is the thesis, if you will, of and for Banking on Change, which is adaptability. To be able to adapt behaviors. And if we're going to adapt behavior, we have to adapt beliefs. And there's this whole spectrum of, they call it the messy middle in between all of that, which you and I will unpack together here when it comes to opportunities for growth for financial brands today through the work that you've been doing over at Nymbus. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, what is good in your world right now, personally, professionally? It's your pick to get started on a positive note.
Oh, awesome. Well, always appreciate that question. You know, I'm a dad to 2 kids. Chloe is 4, Hank is 6. So I'm living that beautiful madness at the moment. Hank's crushing flag football. So it's, seeing his passion for sports is just a lot of fun. And Chloe too, right? She's starting to get into soccer. So, personally as a dad, I just absolutely love that.
Yeah.
And professionally, it's been, starting in Nymbus in 2021, so much change has happened, but like really good change. It's the constant thing that we can expect is change. And, I just love being in an organization where we're driving that change for banks and credit unions and brands. And I know that'll be a large part of what we discussed today, but it's such a really great place professionally too.
It's funny. You talk about your kids 6 and 4. My kids were there a while ago. My kids are now 14, 12, 10, and 8. So
You're a master.
Been there. Oh, I'm not a master. I'm still the student. But I'll tell you this, the biggest lesson that I've learned as a father, change, adaptability.
Yep.
It took me the first 2 kids to learn on them and to learn with them. It was the last 2 kids I finally felt like I fell into like a good role, rhythm, routine, because it was hard. The first 2 kids, particularly as an entrepreneur, traveling a lot on the road. And when it comes to, like you mentioned, you're guiding banks and credit unions through the work that you're doing at Nymbus through change, through transformation. I think it gives a perspective of empathy. It's like, you know what it feels like to change. You've made a lot of change over your years as a leader. I've made a lot of change as a leader. Both of us have made changes as a father. What Think about yourself just for a moment.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest change or changes that you've experienced professionally over the years? Looking back when you first were just starting out to where you're at now, how have you changed the most?
Me personally, how have I changed the most?
Personally, or even as just a leader
Yeah.
for that matter.
I love this question, right? Because even with my time at Nymbus, I've held a number of different positions and I've always been an advertiser marketer at heart. And, if you think about that kind of being a decision and a track that I've always followed throughout my career, right? I've thought a lot about that recently. And, when you find a company that gives you opportunities to change and to learn more, it's so important to get new experiences by jumping different ladders, right? And it's not to say that I'll never go back to marketing. I would love that for that to be in my future. But now I have the opportunity to work with clients at a whole different level, right? Beyond just solving problems through marketing. And I really enjoy being closer to the business and closer to driving actionable change. And not to say that marketing doesn't, but I think it's really important for people as they navigate their career to be open, right? Not only open to change, but open to trying new experiences to give you a better, more well-rounded approach. And now I'm in a capacity where I'm absolutely loving what I'm doing with Nymbus, right? And I'm still working very directly with clients. But also, as you think about how things have really changed over the last couple of years, it's how clients think about their growth mindset, right? How you grew a bank or a credit union or a brand 5 years ago is incredibly different now. Incredibly different. There's different strategies, there's different reactions to the market. And it's just so incredibly important to have your pulse, right? To have a pulse on the market and actually what is driving that change so you can show up in new innovative ways.
What When you think about this idea of mindset, and I'm glad you're tapping into it. I wrote about mindset and banking on change and how mindset, learning, gaining new experiences is a path to continuous growth through continuous change and transformation, because it's the experience. It helps you see things differently. And
Sure
a
does.
lot of it's a matter of perspective. And back to your point, the way to grow a financial brand now and going forward into the future is vastly different than it was 5 years ago, 10, 20, 30 years ago. And if our perspective doesn't change, nothing changes. And so it does come down to experience, learning, seeing things differently. Seeing things differently is the first step to human transformation, because when you see different, the byproduct of that is you're going to think different. What are you seeing, your perspective? What are you observing through the work that you've been doing with clients to help them do just that, to help them see different, to help them think different on their journeys of growth?
Yeah, great. So when we think about, right, I want to go back to something you said about the mindset, because as you and your teams are thinking about, hey, we need to change, we have an opportunity, the first place that everyone should start is their mindset. Are we ready for it? Are we thinking and talking about it the right way? What are our expectations for growth and change? Right. And your ability to also say, hey, this is where we're strong, but this is where we're not. We need to help bring in a partner to help us do that. So, one of the things that I like talking about is just very simply bringing it back to this 3-step model when you're thinking about a growth mindset. And that's right. Stage one is really when you're talking about doing something new in the market, you at least have to show up at parity, right? That is giving you your right to play in the market. And that's just step one, right? Change is a marathon. It's not a race. It should be done in chunks, right? Step two is really finding that thing that makes you different, that giving you the right to win in the market, right? And that's so critically important because sometimes when you skip step one, you got to make sure you're showing up in the familiar and you're delivering what they expect. And then you're giving them giving yourselves a reason to win when you've identified that, well, what's going to make us different? Why would they switch their bank or credit union where I'm so already incredibly sticky? I have to unravel my financial products now to bank with this new digital bank. What makes you different? What problem are you solving in my life that none of the other big banks care enough about to do for me? And then this is the point where it's really exciting because there's so many different opportunities and ways to drive differentiation. It can happen through brand. It can happen through customer experience and service. It can happen through solutions. It can happen through products. And I'm seeing a lot of clients, right? We are now having the opportunity to work with a lot of them around what truly makes you different. And then once you've identified that, right, the third part is also really fun, which is scale. And it's giving yourself the right to grow. You now have the experience, the input from the market to double down on your investment and really hit new expansion strategies than to find the scale that's meaningful back to the business. So I like thinking about it in that 3-step way.
I appreciate a 3-step process because of omni trium perfectum, which is Latin for all good things come in threes. So
Exactly.
when it comes to this 3-step process, let's unpack each one of those steps
Sure.
even further, going back to step number 1, which I think is important. You talked about showing up. I know with my 4 kids, one of the things I'm continuously encouraging them is like 95% of life and success
I love that.
is just to show up. I mean, I think about your 6-year-old son who's playing flag football. Just show up. You don't have to be the best, but if you just show up day in, day out, put the work in, people are going to naturally weed out, and you keep showing up. You keep showing up. You keep showing up. So what's your take on this idea of showing up? Because to me, that's what's top of my mind when I hear you say just show up, is the conversations I've had with my kids.
Oh, yeah, I love that. And actually, it's so funny you say that because I was talking to my son about, he just wrapped up his first season. I'm like, hey, what'd you love about it? And like, what did you experience? We were just having a really rich conversation about it. And it just led me to say the same exact thing you said, is just, you're there for your teammates and you're there to build some camaraderie. So borrowing some of those parallels then to what we do in this exciting banking space really is, working with clients to say, listen, there's no expectation for you to hit the market perfect. There's also, it's actually quite risky sometimes to come out with something brand new, right? There's a lot of risk associated with that. So it's finding that balance of saying, listen, first off, here's what the competitors are doing. And at a minimum, right, you've got to show up with a safe place to keep my money, an easy way to move my money, an easy way to organize my money. And I hope you have a great rate. Right? Like at the end of the day, there's a lot of conversations just over the simple things that have also led to a lot of the commoditization of the banking industry.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it's such a great way to start. And you can, right? Like when you start, it's not just about saying, hey, all of United States, I'm ready for you. No, it's about isolating that to a specific region or a territory where you can use it as a petri dish and a testing ground to validate your assumptions. Right. And that's why it's so important.
You brought up,
is to just show up and establish a foundation for you then to build differentiation on.
You brought up an important point about, the expectation of showing up perfect. And maybe we can frame that as the perfection paradox. It's like we believe that we have to have 100% perfection to go to market. But how might that belief really be an impediment and a roadblock that would prevent us from making progress in the first place?
Yeah. And it's like the death by 1,000 cuts, right? And partly in this modern world, you just got to get to market quickly. Now that's not moving at the speed of insanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're still taking calculated risks. We're still using the assumptions that we've made through data to make informed decisions.
Yeah.
There's a point where there's diminishing return, right? Because then if you can't get to market quickly, if your technology doesn't allow you to do that, timing is incredibly important of when you do that. And that's also a thing that I think is missed a bit, is what are we trying to do, but also when is the right time to do it? Do we have the imperative to do this quickly? Do
Yes.
we have some intel that our competitors are making a move? What's happening in regulation in 6 months that if we're allowed to speed up, it'll give us a strategic leg up. So that timing is so incredibly important. And that's where I think you need to get rid of the pressure to do everything so perfect and get to market in a way where you can contain that risk. But then again, use it as a petri dish and a testing ground, then to validate your expansion.
What you're sharing here, it's taking me back to like ninth grade, 10th grade biology, chemistry, i.e. the scientific method. I mean, you're using the analogy of the petri dish. And the scientific method is we take data, we make an informed hypothesis, and then we test that hypothesis. And the experiment is not over at that point. It's actually just getting started. So that actually takes us into step 2 of your 3-step process here. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the conversation with David, but I wanted to take a minute to tell you about the 2025 Digital Growth Accelerator program that we have exclusively for growth-minded financial brand marketing, sales, and leadership teams who want to thrive and not just survive in 2025. So if this sounds like you, text me right now, 832-549-5792, because when you join the 2025 Digital Growth Accelerator program, you and your team are going to get a customer journey assessment, as well as a website secret shopping study that shows you where you have blind spots in your customer journey, costing you millions in loans and deposits. You're also going to get access to all 12 classes of the Digital Growth University so that together you can develop a strategic growth plan that guides you forward into the future. And then finally, you're going to get ongoing learning. You're going to get ongoing development through quarterly customer journey master classes that I will facilitate. And these master classes are going to show you what you need to do next so that you can eliminate common customer journey blind spots so that together with your team, you can continue to level up your loan and deposit growth every 90 days. Even better, you can join the Digital Growth Accelerator right now, 100% risk-free. That means you can have your money back. That if by the end of 2025, you don't get at least a dozen new ideas that will help you build your brand while at the same time eliminating customer journey blind spots, you're going to get your money back. Put another way, what are you risking by not joining the Digital Growth Accelerator? How many more loans and deposits are you going to risk losing because you have unseen gaps? You have unseen blind spots in your customer journeys that you're just simply not aware of. Here's the best part. When you take action to apply what you learn in the Digital Growth Accelerator, you're going to be making an investment. You're going to be making an investment in yourself. You're going to be making an investment in your team that you'll get back when you just get 3 to 5 new accounts when you apply the lessons that you learn. So if you're ready to thrive and not just survive in 2025, text me right now, 832-549-5792. Let's have a quick conversation. Let's get back to the podcast. Let's dive further into step 2 now that we've addressed the perfection paradox. That, you know what, we're going to not speed of light, but we're going to still make informed decisions, but we eventually are going to have to take action to move forward and start making progress, which is step 2.
Yeah. And step 2, right? I mean, how many hours do we have here, right? And step 2, there's a couple different routes that we can go, and we've talked about going with clients within the Nymbus portfolio. But I want to go back to and it's at this point, I don't know if I can call it a platitude that we're hearing out in the airwaves. The idea of a horizontal approach is now starting to die, and this idea of being vertical is so important. And in step 2, that verticalization, right? Your ability to go deep. And to go deep, meaning like, okay, we've got a savings account, we've got a checking account, we've got, right, a safe way to keep your money, we've got an easy way to move your money. If you check the box and all the things that I expect from a bank, this is where it gets exciting, right? And the idea of verticalization then allows you to get deep on the audiences and the communities that you intend to serve. And that could be skilled freelancers, could be a number of different other verticals where now it's about developing the experiences, the solutions, the features, the products that solve that vertical's problem, right? And it could be anything from a skilled freelancer and their ability to borrow money quickly, but also to help solve their cash flow through an embedded invoicing solution, right? And as soon as you start to crack that nut a bit, you're building the value proposition to serve that vertical, right? And again, coming back to technology, your technology's got to be there to help support this verticalized approach, right? And allows you to get deep. So phase two is about getting deep, right? And it's about showing up in a way where it's not just like Bank X launching a new product. It's we're solving this problem through a solution. And that's how you start to build the momentum then in your growth journey.
So step two is, we'll say, differentiation. And differentiation is the result of being disciplined to do different things. And in some cases, different might have the perception of quote unquote feeling temporarily difficult because it's uncomfortable. But your perspective of, shifting the mind from the horizontal to the vertical, going deep instead of wide, that's where the real differentiation is found. What are the and I'm going to frame it this way. What are the self-limiting
Yeah.
beliefs that you hear that others might have who are watching or listening, saying, you know what, that's great that, and I can name all the names that X, Y, and Z, they've done this,
Yeah.
but we could never do something like that? Because I do believe that's a self-limiting belief, because belief is
It
what
is.
informs behavior. What are the beliefs, and why do you think those beliefs even exist in the first place when it comes to differentiation?
Yeah. Love that question. Love that build. Let's go back to what we had first started with mindset,
Mm,
right? If that's why that mindset is so important to establish from the beginning. And you got to take a leap at that point. It's like we're here because we want a new way to win. We want, like, we could be an established credit union who has met our limits of growth within the region or the charter that we serve, right? And we've gotten here because we've done it a certain way. Now we have to extend our footprint, right? We've got to do something new. And we're doing it new because we have to do it a bit differently than how we've been doing it. And it might have been a brick and mortar strategy that, right, isn't going to support the next level of growth in
right.
terms of efficiency. So, especially as you're getting into this digital world of launching digital banking solutions and digital banks, it's a different growth mindset. The way that you grow a digital bank cannot be the same way that you grew a brick and mortar. There's a lot of consistencies there and a lot of principles that you definitely don't want to throw out, right?
Yeah.
Um, but again, it comes back to that mindset. And I have seen that be a self-limiting belief with teams, which is, hey, this is the way that we've always done it. And I like to be a broken record and a constant reminder of, let's go back to why we're doing this in the first place. Do you fundamentally believe that thought process, that mindset is going to get you to the next phase of growth and to help you accomplish the goals that you set out? And it's a good gut check for a
Yeah.
lot of teams.
The-
And again, it comes back to this analysis of the Petri dish, reminding them that, hey, we're mitigating our risk by containing the launch. So it's okay to fail, right? Like as we get into phase two in year 2, 3, 4, I want to be able to invest in things that work, but also equally know what doesn't. So we don't continue to make those same mistakes. So that experimentation mentality is just so critically important in the first 24 months.
yeah. The idea of the why is something that I wrote about in Banking on Digital Growth through the lens of purpose. I wrote about it in Banking on Change with the acronym You Have to Care. Do you even care for growth? And CARE is an acronym. Commit to a cause greater than the present moment. Adapt your beliefs so that you can adapt your behavior. Resiliency is the way. And then energy.
Yeah.
How we're investing that energy, because it's interesting as we're comparing and contrasting steps 1 and step 2 here. It is, step 2 is technology as a path to support differentiation and that have that capability. But before we can even think about that technology, we have to master the technology that sits between our ears, which is the mind. And
Yeah.
I look at it this way: it's like the brain, that's the hardware. The mind is the software. And if we're going to unlock new opportunities for growth, we have to upgrade the software. It's very hard to upgrade the hardware, and Maybe we'll eventually get
Yeah.
there one way, shape, form, or fashion. But for right now, we're going to have to continuously upgrade the software, which is really how we started this conversation. It's about seeing things differently. When you see different, you're going to think different. How do you see things differently? It's through learning, it's through education, it's through experience. So now we're step one, we're into step two. Step two, differentiation, deployment, technology as a supporting factor for a path forward to unlock new growth through a vertical alignment. Where are the opportunities here in step two that you see through the work that you've been doing over at Nymbus?
And you say the word upgrade, right? An upgrade can be, very tactically an upgrade of the technology. And as you're going through these phases, right, it's incredibly important that they build on one another and that you don't forget about step one and step two.
Mm-hmm.
So even in step two, there's a lot of exciting upgrades happening, right? And one of the biggest challenges we have is to ensure that a lot of our clients have the latest and greatest features and functionality as part of their releases,
Mm-hmm.
right? That will benefit their growth strategy. And it's a problem for Nymbus too as we start to expand we have rapid growth with our client portfolio, and managing 4 or 5 clients is very different from managing 10 to 15. So part of that challenge is ensuring that, right, like we don't expect our clients to read 200 pages of technically written release notes, right? But part of one of the values of the function of client growth and is to translate what can be in releases to say, hey, let's activate this because it's the hot new thing as part of our release, and it definitely can enable your growth strategy, and here's why. And it's either a simple turn on, et cetera. There's so much of those just underlying really powerful nuggets as part of the technology that can often be forgotten, right, as part of release schedules. So that's just an important point as you think about phase two, which is, are we constantly improving the basics?
Yeah.
And the basics can be, right, the technology, the enhancements, right? That is your foundation for growth and scale. And those that forget to maintain that are very limited in terms of making it to the next step.
When it comes to step one and step two, both require adaptability, adapting the mind, adapting beliefs, adapting thought patterns, adapting behavior, adapting technology. And adaptation is what I look at as AQ. You got EQ, which is your emotional intelligence. Your AQ is your adaptability intelligence. And just like EQ, AQ can be measured, it can be benchmarked, it can be strengthened like a muscle over time. So, in regards to the release notes here, you're acting like the role of a trainer or a guide. They're not having to do this by themselves. They've got someone working with them to strengthen that adaptability quotient over a period of time, which then leads us into step three. And step three, if I recall correctly, that's where things begin to scale.
Correct. Yeah.
Where's the
And
opportunity here?
so here's the bridge. Yeah. And here's the bridge from 2 to 3. And I love the trainer analogy, right? You're speaking to the ex athlete, far removed ex athlete in me, but the idea of reps and sets,
Yep.
right? The reason that you practice, the reason that you put in the reps and sets is for consistency. And that's you're strengthening your foundation, right? And, you're going to trip, you're going to fall, you're going to make mistakes. And all those are so incredibly important in terms of growth, right? I heard this somewhere, and it's probably a horrible analogy, but broken bones heal stronger in the places that they break, right?
Yep.
And the same can be said just in terms of phase 1 and 2 growth strategy, right? So part of that is it's important to put your team through the reps and sets to prepare them for the idea of scale, because this is where it gets super exciting, right? It is, okay, we just can't scale willy-nilly. This has to be calculated. It's got to be strategic. There's a right way to do it. There's a wrong way to do it. And it's got to be rooted into how you got to phase 2. What's working? What feedback have we updated, right? Based on our target audience? Do we feel like it's ready for a phased approach? Because the last thing that you want in step 3 is to drive more people through the top of the funnel and then have a super leaky bucket.
Right.
right? And at this point, you'd expect that what you're doing in terms of growth activity has become more efficient, right? Your cost per acquisition, you should have seen naturally come down, right? So the idea of where you're putting investment should be less risky, right? And you're putting it towards the things that are doing the heavy lifting, but you're still retaining part of your budget to try new things,
Yes.
right? And that's incredibly important. And I love thinking about this, again, fan of threes, but think about your budgets, even in terms of the 70-20-10 rule.
Mm-hmm.
70% should go to your workhorse. 20% should be making the workhorse work differently and in new ways
Yep.
on the bed of foundation where you know it's working. And 10% is like, hey team, like I'm okay to lose this. I'm okay to fail with this budget.
Yes.
If we fail, it's not going to impact our bottom line. And that's a mistake that I see in some of the growth planning, which is using your budgets in that way to continue that scale. Because phase 3, right, it can be for years.
Right.
Right. And it's just so important to come back to that mentality at the beginning to make sure you're set for it.
This is something that I wrote about in Banking on Change, and it's the idea of the 90-day growth method. And every 90 days, we must cycle through 4 seasons. So we're almost compressing a year because there's 4 seasons in a year, right? There's spring, summer, winter, fall. I said that out of order. There's spring, summer, fall, and winter. When we look at the 90-day growth method, we're cycling through those 4 seasons of learning, thinking, doing, and reviewing. And by doing that process every 90 days, we can reflect and review on what we've done to celebrate our wins and our successes, but then to also learn through what some might historically have perceived as failure. But if we reframe the perspective of failure, well, that was just tuition. So that 10% that you're talking about, that could be viewed as tuition for future growth that we're going to not fail with, but we're going to learn from. And by learning, we're going to think about how we can do even better through the next iteration over the next 90 days. And as a result, we're always going to be making progress. We're never going to ever get stuck. And we review from where we started, like, oh my goodness, we have come a long way over the last 90 days.
Right. And there's so many things that happen throughout that process where, in my old advertising days, we used to say, hey, let's go back to the cutting room floor. Because there's so many ideas and things that didn't work in the moment that may work now. And you get a lot of people into a room, a lot of smart people into the room. And the challenge is kind of reining that in, right? But the trick is to never lose some of those ideas, because you may go back to them and say, hey, that was the wrong time. Let's bring it back. And I love seeing that. I absolutely love seeing it, because not only does it build camaraderie of the partnership, and that's clients and their partners included, but we're in it together. And that's where it's like, it's not this idea of I have a vendor delivering the technology. I've got a partner who's invested in my growth and is helping me do it.
Yes. Well, it's collaboration. And through collaboration, that's where we begin to hack math. That's where 1 + 1 = 11. And to your point,
I love that.
The ideas that we had in the past that might not have been viable at that moment in time, we can put them in what we call here at the Digital Growth Institute, we can put those into the innovation jar. I don't like to use the word parking lot. I don't like to use the word back burner, because oftentimes, at least at my house, like if things are on the back burner on the stove, they've most likely fallen behind the stove. And I've got kids and toys and cars, things that have gone under the stove.
It's there until you move out.
Right. We don't want to put things on the back burner, but when we put them into the innovation jar, it's a deposit. It's a deposit that we're making for future growth that we can come back and then revisit the innovation jar every 90 days to then what would work? What could we reprioritize? How could this be even better going forward into the next iteration? David, as we start to wrap up here, I really appreciate the 3-step perspective that you have shared today, that would guide anyone who's watching or listening on their journey of growth. What would you recommend as a next best step for someone who is watching or someone who's listening, so that they can begin to at least make progress? Something small that they can do right now at this moment in time, nothing big, but just one small, simple step that they can do right now to move forward.
Sure. So I have 2 for you. Am I allowed 2?
Two is good.
2. All right. So the first thing, again, kind of coming full circle, go back, have the conversation with your team on how you're going to approach change and growth. What's going to be the mindset? almost create a little bit of a manifesto for the team, right? And get some buy-in to it and say, we're going to come back to this, and this is going to be our guide. And it's going to be, right, the thing that we come back to when we feel like we're losing our way, because that mindset is so important to remain consistent as you go through those phases. The second thing is, don't feel like you have to do it alone, right? Change is hard because change is inevitably you're doing something new and you're stretching new muscles. You need a trainer, you need a team to win, right? So banks and credit unions and brands that feel like they can do it themselves, it's a hard path. So have the conversations with your partners, right? Have your partners show up to help provide solutions. And it's okay to bring a problem and an objective. And the best partners will sit down and say, they're going to ask good questions. And they're going to say, give us a few days and come back to see if we can help solve it for you, right? Even if the answer might be no, the best partners will show up to say, hey, we want to be part of your growth journey. And we need to collectively partner together to figure out how to solve it. So again, that second thing is, you can't do it alone. It's very hard to do it alone, and to really trust your partners to be there on the table and on the team to help you do it.
And it all starts with the conversation and being curious and just simply telling the truth about where you've been, about where you're at, and about where you could possibly go next on this journey of growth. And to your point, I'll speak from experience. It's hard to grow alone. That's one of the reasons I think about let's take fitness, let's take health. It's like you can go to the gym and you can get a membership, but you could go to the gym, get a membership, get a trainer, someone who's been there, who's led others down that path before. They're going to hold you accountable. They're going to create a custom plan for you, and they're going to, in some cases, work out with you, because that's the power of collaboration. That's where 1 + 1 = 11. David, if someone's speaking about a conversation, they're watching this, they're listening to this, they want to continue the conversation that we've started here today, what is the best way for them to reach out and say hello to you?
Yeah. Reach out to my email, dbarone@nymbus.com. Would love to, extend the conversation. Go to nymbus.com too, right? Fabulous website built by our marketing team, going into everything that we have to offer and a lot of the growth strategies moving forward. There's a lot of great success stories of our clients there. So go check it out. There's a way to get in touch with the team there as well. But James, Robert, it's been a pleasure. This has been awesome. I love talking shop, especially with you. So thanks for having me on.
It has been a lot of fun, as always. And until next time, be well, do good, and be the light.